Howdy ho, my peeps! I had a wild hair today, and I decided I would sit here in the pretty morning sunlight and do a craft project with you guys. As you could tell by the title, we're going to make pet beds out of sweaters. This particular sweater was my mom's. Let's see what it is. I'm gonna cut the tag out. It'll make it a little easier. It's a Ralph Lauren Sport 100% cotton sweater. So I'm going to cut this tag because it's just in my way. Now, this isn't a full-on tutorial, with good production value or anything. This is just my version of this pet bed. There are tutorials all over YouTube for how to make these. So feel free to look around and what I did is I searched DIY pet bed sweater, and a ton of these came up. So this is what you need. You need, obviously, a long sleeve sweater. This happens to be a size extra large. I think that'll be good for a cat, probably. You need something to sew it up with. I'm using this crochet cotton I had lying around in my stash. It's not the same color, but that's cool. We're gonna head for sort of a boho look, because once I make the pet bed, then I'm gonna decorate the pet bed. So you know me, I cannot leave any surface undecorated. All right, the next thing you'll need, of course, is some scissors, and you'll need a needle, which I happen to have right here. This is a nice big needle with a big eye on it. It'll be relatively easy to thread. Hey, how many of you guys have one of these? These little sewing kits were so popular. Must have been in the late 50s into the 60s, maybe. This one was my grandmother's, and after she passed, I inherited this. They actually had two. My grandfather had one as well. I don't know what happened to his, but anyhow, I get the biggest kick out of using my grandparents' stuff. Okay, so I am going to gonna thread this needle, and then I'll show you what the steps are. Let's see if this will thread reasonably quickly. I feel like I should be singing the Jeopardy song. Da 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 da. Although I did get it, I got it threaded pretty quick. Okay, so just gonna tie a knot in the bottom. Okay, so this is what you do. First thing is you want to sew the neck closed. Then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to sew the body closed from armpit. So from the armpit here all the way across to the armpit there. So it will be sewn closed right along that horizontal line from armpit to armpit. So that's what we'll do first. I don't know if I'm going to fast forward through all of this and cut it all out, or if I'm going to leave some of this talking in. And you don't have to be, well, I'm going to do it like this so you can see better. You don't have to be particularly neat. I mean, the whole idea is just a bed that when it gets dirty and torn up, you're probably just going to throw it away. But anyhow, so you just sew. I'm going to do like an overhand stitch just around here. So anyhow, I might cut this out, all this talking out, but I doubt it. Yeah, so the California fires. It is November 17th, I think, today, and the fires started around 6:30 in the morning on my birthday, which was November 8th. And we're in the middle of the state, so we weren't in any danger, but we're getting we're getting some smoke from the Northern California fire that it's called the Camp Fire. Um, Not bad, not bad at all. The Bay Area has gotten much, much worse smoke than we have. We're up on the eastern side of California, up against the Sierra Mountains, so we didn't get much of the drift. Um, Tell you what, it is just freaking heartbreaking every day to hear the new death toll and the new missing persons toll. As of today, the death toll was 66 people, and the missing persons is hovering right around 1,000. And when you watch the videos of people who managed to escape in their cars, it's worse than any disaster movie I think I've ever seen. These people are just driving like bats out of hell through all of this. The flames are on both sides of their cars. Sometimes they have to drive through flames. I saw this one guy, they drove through flames, and then the next thing they know, he was in a kind of a tall Jeep. They were driving up over a tree that they didn't see in the road. Just complete craziness. So that's been a very sad thing to have to watch. And now I guess the East Coast, you guys just got your first big storm. I think the death toll yesterday was 8 from that storm. I have a lot of friends on the East Coast. I've been thinking about moving to the East Coast, but I don't think that's going to happen because I would have to sell my California property. And even though I've got it on the market, there's no bites. So if I lived in a little suburb or something, I would have a much easier time selling. But I live up in the foothills in a little double wide trailer, very funky, and probably the only people that would be willing to buy this place would be people who just want to, demo the trailer and build their own place. So, and with the water situation being as bad as it is up here, our well hasn't run dry, but that could very well happen. I don't know how easy it's going to be to move properties. But I had given a lot of thought, and I'm still dreaming about moving. I'd first thought about Vermont. Oh gosh, I think that's the most beautiful state. Um, I know a few people who live there, and I'm particularly drawn to far northern Vermont, which isn't. That's not the happening spot in Vermont. You want to be down near Bennington or Burlington or Woodstock or Rutland, somewhere down in there where there's a little bit of life going on. Northern Vermont, there's just not a whole lot going on up there, not anymore. A lot of failing dairy farms. I'm sure there's plenty that aren't failing, but the smaller ones are having a lot of trouble staying alive. But I like it. I like the sort of the rugged sort of outback feeling that I get when I view towns or properties that are up there by the Canadian border. I also kind of like the idea of being near the Canadian border too. It's the Canadian border is as interesting as the Mexico border is. And this one little town that I was interested in, there was property that I was interested in that has now sold, but you can drive along one of the roads in this town and you're actually in Canada for about 1/10 of a mile. So when I say northern Vermont, I mean northern Vermont. So I looked at that first, just fell in love, then started looking at some other areas. I was looking at New Hampshire for a while. I wasn't too sprung on New Hampshire, in part because the property taxes seemed so just exorbitantly high. I don't know much else about New Hampshire in terms of sales tax or income tax or any of that, but I had a little bit of sticker shock when it came to when it came to the property tax. Um, so I looked at New Hampshire. I kind of looked at upstate New York. I've got friends that live there or near there. Pretty. But you know what I've ended up falling in love with is the state of Maine. I know Maine is like where all the old folks who like snow go to Maine, as opposed to the old folks who like heat. No, those people go to Arizona or New Mexico or Florida. Well, my husband and I are old folks who like the cold, so Maine just seemed like a good spot for us. We've both, he much more so than I, have lived or spent extended times in snowy climates, so we have a pretty good idea of the equipment that you need to have. That's you know, and the fact that you need to be really, really good friends with one of the adolescent boys in your relative neighborhood so that you can hire them to do your to dig you out after a nor'easter. um, so yeah, but anyhow, just loved it. Especially I well, the places I really love I can't afford. I couldn't afford to live in Bar Harbor. Couldn't afford to live at Cape Elizabeth, which are two of my just most favorite spots. But I also like it a little bit north, right along the coast in what's called the Down East area. Um, there's a particular town called Cherryfield. It's a little village about 4 miles up the river from the actual ocean, from the harbor areas. And boy, I found the neatest dang house in Cherryfield. Of course, it sold pretty quickly. It was a second Empire style Victorian. It had been redone on the inside almost to the point of too modern. I did not was not too happy with how much they gutted the downstairs, but the upstairs almost looked untouched. The the bedrooms and the bathroom, everything was very original 1920s and 30s. It was pretty neat. It was a very neat house. But that sold. So anyhow, okay, so my neck is closed up. I've tied a knot. I'm going to tie another one just in case, and I'm going to clip this. So anyhow, I we narrowed it down. I mean, if we did move to the East Coast, Maine would be our number one place for looking. Although there are a couple of properties in Vermont that have been on the market for a while, I think it's because they're overpriced. But I love them too, so you know. But like I said, I think that's pretty much a dream that has, you know, come and gone in terms of what we'd be able to do. Um, so yeah, I've been giving that some thought. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to sew this from armpit to armpit. I'm just going to put it down on the table and just sew across with a running stitch. I don't think you guys need to watch me do that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'm going to come back to you and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so we're back. This is what it looks like sewn across. You can see the stitching line there. Just real simple running stitch. That's all I did. So now the next step is to go ahead and stuff along the sleeve, the top of the body, and into the other sleeve. You're going to want to stuff that completely. Once it's stuffed, we're going to take the two cuffs. We will put one inside the other, and then we'll sew this together. So that's the next step. I'm not going to sew this closed. I'm just going to stop my stitching my stuffing at about this point. Now, stuffing. You can use fiber fill. You can use stuffing from old pillows. You can use bubble wrap if it lasts that long in your possession. Mine never does. I have to do each and every bubble or I freak out. The other thing that you can use and that I am using today is old clothes, specifically old ratty t-shirts. What I've done to stuff the sleeves, since it's kind of it's a narrower section than the body, I went ahead and I cut the sleeves off of some of these t-shirts and I quartered the bodies. So I cut the front and the back apart and then cut them down the middle. So it gives me something a little bit easier to stuff. So starting at one end, either end, you just start stuffing your stuffing in there. And I think what I'll do is I'll go as far as the center of the neck. I'll stuff up to this point, and then when the sleeve thing's all stuffed, then I'll go in from the other side and stuff. So I think that's how I'm going to do that. So anyhow, yeah, moving out of California has been on my mind. I love California, don't get me wrong. I'm so glad that I was born here and I grew up here and I've lived here most of my life. But the state's just drying up. It's been drying up for a while. I mean, we didn't really experience it the way we're experiencing it now, but the signs have been there for 30 years that this was going to eventually happen, kind of starting with the bark beetle infestation that killed so many trees up in the Sierras, to the longer and more severe periods of drought that we've had. The writing's been on the wall for a while. But you hope that it's just a little anomaly and that you'll have a good, 10 years of wet weather just sort of out of the blue. Kind of, those are the wishes that I've had anyway. And I don't think it's going to happen. So, I'm going down with the ship. My husband and I have decided we're going to, completely trick out our house and property the way we want it, and do all the mending of the fences and the building of the dog yard and all that sort of stuff that we've been putting off, and just really dig in. Might do some solar panels. My husband can install he knows all that stuff. He's done solar installations for people before. So we've got skills. we can make it to the point where we're, backpacking from watering hole to watering hole after everything is gone. I think we're going to be like the cockroaches. We're going to be really, really hard to kill. But now, while we still have water in our well and we're still in an area that's hasn't burned up, we're gonna count our blessings, and be happy that we're here and that we get to live out in nature, the way that makes us happy. Neither one of us would be happy in a development. We've both lived in, suburban areas before where you're cheek to jowl with your neighbor, and it doesn't work well for our personality types. We're better in a little more rural area. And not to say that we don't enjoy people. We do. We've got wonderful neighbors here, but they're not I can't see their house from my window. They're up in their own little hidey hole, up canyon a little bit, and I like that. Um, so I've got some renewed vision about my home here and what I would like to do. Um, I'd really like to clean up all the edges, if you know what I mean. All the fencing we've just been, kind of Frankensteining together all this time and that sort of stuff. I'm looking forward to cleaning up all of that and using up some of the wonderful building materials that I've saved. I've got some beautiful fencing out there. It's a wrought iron that had my dad had bought originally. I bought some of it, but he bought quite a bit. He was going to enclose their front pasture, which was about an acre and a half, in this beautiful wrought iron fencing that we found used on Craigslist. And it just never happened. He got sick. Then he passed, not about a year or two after he really started to go downhill. And then my mom sort of went to sleep for 2 years. And when she woke up, she had lung cancer. And so, the rest of our time spent at the homestead was about taking care of mom and dad. And then after mom passed, we have all this fencing. So my sister got some of it and I took the rest, and I'm going to use it around here. Okay, so here we go. We've got this arm stuffed, and we're stuffed to past the center of the chest here. Using the t-shirts makes it kind of heavy, but I sort of like that. I sort of like the heaviness of it. I think there's something to be said for that. So now I'm going to flip it around and I'm going to start stuffing this other side. Now, that first side, okay, so I cut up the t-shirts and yeah, that worked. No problem there. But I'm wondering if I really need to do that. I think I'm going to attempt to use this whole t-shirt to stuff in this side here. We'll see how this works. Now I've got 2 of these sweaters. No, I'm going to definitely need to cut it up. I've got 2 of these sweaters, this purple one that I'm working on now, and then sort of a bright coral one. They're exactly the same. My mother would do that. If she found something that she liked, she would buy it in every color and, just wear the heck out of it. She had been an elementary school teacher, and she loved to dress in a way that made her students, that tickled her students. So she was always very careful to look bright and happy and interesting for her kids. So she had a nice little wardrobe. And she wore a lot of coral. I don't like coral on me. It looked good on her, but I don't really like it. Obviously, purple is my color. It's in my hair. I'm wearing it. It's all over my house. I'm stuffing this purple sweater with a bunch of, pink and purple t-shirts. And, yeah, so she looked good in that coral. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this purple one for my cats or my little dog when it decides it wants to be inside. And the coral one I'm going to donate to my ex-husband's cat sanctuary. I gotta give it to him. He's on disability for a bad neck, or I think it's his neck. Yeah, it's his neck. And he's got that whole neuropathy deal where you can't feel anything in your arms and blah, blah, blah. And he's bored to tears and he loves animals. So he's embarked on this unofficial cat rescue. Unofficial in that he doesn't have a 501c. He doesn't have nonprofit status, although he's been doing his homework about nonprofit status for quite some time. So, at some point he might get it together and end up um, nonprofit, which would be lovely. That way, I could write off at least $200 of my donations to his cat sanctuary. Um, so anyhow, I'm going to make 2 of these for that reason. I'm not going to decorate the one I give to him, because what he normally does, I'll make cat beds or cat mats for him, and he'll use them for, I don't know, a year or 6 months or something, and then he'll toss them um, and start fresh with something fresh. So, and that's because, like, if there's a flea infestation, if they have to do some sort of special defleeing or whatever. Also, with that many animals, he does quite a bit of wash constantly, and stuff just doesn't hold up. So I just provide him with free bedding a couple times a year, and that works out really well. I've talked about doing on my card reading channel, doing a live stream card reading, free. Just come in and get your cards read if you want. And if you want to donate, you can. Certainly don't have to. But I'll set it up in such a way that people who donate get bumped to the top of the list in terms of getting their cards read. So that way, no obligation. I'll read your cards, but you'll get higher in line if you donate. Now, I've been talking about doing this for a while. I haven't set it up yet, in part because I have lots and lots of good ideas and not all that much time, and then I'll get sidetracked on something else. Like I got sidetracked on making my Christmas ornaments out of felt. I had so much fun doing that. I will probably go back to it at some point, but for right now, it's all about cleaning and organizing, trying to convince my husband to throw crap out, trying to convince myself to throw crap out. I'm just as bad as he is. And just kind of buckling in for the winter.